Right now, without realizing it, you are reading someone else's fear. Not their words, not their face, their smell. You can't name it. You probably don't even know you're detecting it. But somewhere beneath conscious thought, your brain is pulling chemical signals out of the air around you, decoding them, and quietly adjusting your behavior in response. It has been doing this your entire life. You never once got a notification. The idea that emotions have a smell sounds like something from a fantasy novel. It sounds wrong. You learned that smell is for food, for danger, for memory, not for feelings. But the real answer is far stranger than anything you were taught. Because your body doesn't just produce emotions, it broadcasts them. For most of human history, you lived in groups of 30 to 100 people. You slept in the same enclosed space. You breathed the same air. And for thousands of years before language became precise enough to warn someone in detail, your body had already developed a faster system, a chemical one, a system that could transmit alarm, attraction, sadness, and calm through the air before a single word left your mouth. That system never switched off. It's still running right now. The science here is called chemosignaling, and the researchers who first started taking it seriously in humans were largely dismissed. The idea that humans, unlike most mammals, had lost the ability to communicate chemically was so embedded in scientific thinking that evidence to the contrary was treated as a mistake rather than a discovery. But the evidence kept building. Denise Chen, a psychologist at Rice University, ran one of the first landmark studies on human emotional chemosignaling. Her team collected sweat from donors who had either watched a fearful film or a neutral one. They then had a separate group of participants smell the samples without knowing which was which, while inside a brain scanner. The results were stark. Smelling fear sweat activated the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for threat detection. Neutral sweat did not. The participants couldn't tell you they smelled anything different, but their brains responded as if a predator had just walked into the room. Your brain processed that signal long before it reached your conscious awareness. That's the part that should stop you for a moment, because conscious awareness is slow, terrifyingly slow by biological standards. By the time you know you're afraid, your body has already been preparing to respond for hundreds of milliseconds. It has already shifted your breathing, already primed your muscles. Chemosignaling is even faster than that. It bypasses your reasoning entirely. It talks directly to the older, faster parts of your brain, the parts that evolved hundreds of millions of years before you had words, and it doesn't just carry fear. A research team led by Gun Simin at Utrecht University published findings showing that sweat produced during a state of disgust caused people who smelled it to make the facial expressions of disgust without knowing why. Sweat collected during a happy, excited state caused people who were exposed to it to show signs of approach behavior, wider scanning eye movements, and a subtle but measurable increase in positive mood. You weren't told you smelled anything. You weren't told to feel anything. Your body just quietly received the transmission and acted on it. This is older than you can easily imagine. Go back far enough in your own evolutionary history, past the first humans, past the first primates, past the first mammals, and you find that chemical communication is the original language of life on Earth. Bacteria signal each other chemically. Insects' entire civilizations run on chemical messaging. Fish release chemicals into water to warn schools of approaching predators. The machinery that reads these signals, the molecular receptors, the neural pathways, the behavioral responses, it all exists in your body as well. Modified, layered over, partially suppressed, but not gone. You have a structure in your nose called the vomeronasal organ. In many other mammals, it is a dedicated receiver for pheromones, chemical social signals that carry identity, reproductive status, fear, and territory. For years, the scientific consensus was that your vomeronasal organ was vestigial, a remnant, a biological leftover with no function like the appendix was assumed to be before research showed otherwise. But more recent studies have found that while the organ itself may be largely non-functional in adult humans, the receptors that detect certain airborne chemical compounds are distributed throughout your nasal epithelium. The function didn't disappear. It just migrated. You are still receiving signals. You just don't know you are. and the signals are more sophisticated than simple alarm. Johan Lundström, a neuroscientist at the Monell Chemical Senses Center in Philadelphia, has spent years mapping exactly which emotions produce which chemical compounds, and which effects those compounds trigger in people who encounter them. His research has shown that the sweat produced during states of anxiety smells genuinely different at a molecular level from the sweat produced during physical exertion, even though both involve the same glands producing the same basic fluid. The difference is in trace compounds, steroids, proteins, fatty acids that the body releases in slightly different ratios depending on the emotional state producing the sweat. Your nose catches those ratios. Your brain reads them. You feel something shift, just slightly, without a reason you can name. Think about the last time you walked into a room and immediately felt uneasy. No one said anything alarming. Nothing looked wrong, but something felt off. That wasn't intuition in the mystical sense. That was chemosignaling. You were reading the room in the most literal biological way possible. The people who had been in that room before you, or the people in it with you, had been producing stress compounds, and your brain had quietly cataloged that input and translated it into a vague but persistent sense that something was not right. Think about the last time you felt immediately calm around someone without knowing why, or immediately drawn to a stranger in a way that had nothing to do with their face or what they said. Your body was reading them. And here is where it gets genuinely strange, because this chemical broadcast system does more than convey emotion from one person to another. It synchronizes groups. Lundström's work and other studies have demonstrated that when people share physical space for extended periods, their emotional states begin to align. Not just because they're having similar experiences. At a chemical level, one person's emotional broadcast shifts the biology of the people around them. Stress is literally contagious. So is calm. So is joy. This is why the most chronically anxious person in a shared household tends to raise baseline anxiety levels in everyone else who lives there. Not through what they say or do, though those matter too. At a chemical level, they are broadcasting, and everyone around them is receiving. It also means the reverse is true. Calm people don't just seem calming, they are chemically calming. When someone who has a low-threat baseline enters a space, they bring their chemistry with them. Other nervous systems register it. Other nervous systems respond. You have been doing this in every room you've ever entered, every relationship you've ever had, every conversation. You have been broadcasting your emotional state through the air around you in a language that no one ever taught you and that no one ever told you to speak. And every person you've been close to has been receiving that broadcast, translating it, and adjusting their behavior accordingly, all below the threshold of conscious awareness, all in a system that predates language by hundreds of millions of years. Your emotions are not private. They never were. And right now, in whatever space you're in, whoever is nearby is picking up signals you didn't know you were sending. Their nervous systems are quietly decoding your chemistry. Their moods are bending, just slightly, in response. This has been true every day of your life. The next time you walk into a room and feel something you can't name, understand that you are not imagining it. You are reading it. In a language older than words. In a language your body never forgot, even though no one told you it was still speaking. You never noticed that your emotions have a smell, but everyone around you has been noticing all along.